So today we're going to be talking about our research paper entitled What is Really Going On Inside These Four Walls? An in-depth analysis of behavioral practices performed during quarantine. This is presented to you by
Gina Kashera,
Kayla Martin,
Brandon Finnemore,
Olivia Hostetler,
Dante Salenti.
So let's get started. Today we're going to cover the introduction to the research topic. We will cover the justification for research, the statement of a problem. We will review the literature used for our research paper, the methodology used as well. We'll cover the results found from the survey. We'll discuss our findings, and lastly, we will conclude the study. So Dante will begin with our introduction.
According to Worldometer info, there are 3,756,423 confirmed cases of COVID-19, 1,258,552 recovered, and 259,449 deaths. This is what caused a nationwide epidemic quarantine and what sparked our interest to create our survey. Our survey purpose is to discover how people are handling the crisis and what they are doing under quarantine. Collecting this data will not give us the cure for the virus, but it will give us an understanding of what is going on in some of the Americans' households and their minds. And with this understanding, hopefully the knowledge from the survey can reach other people after we finish in collecting our data. Now I'm going to give it to Olivia, who will cover the justification and the statement of the problem.
All right, so the purpose of this study was to examine the effects of social isolation. The social isolation is the absence of relationships with people, and the objective of social isolation is to interrupt transmissions of the virus between persons. With the quarantine, the objective is to reduce potential transmissions before symptoms occur in those who are exposed with the virus. And then for expanding the knowledge, there's a lack of current studies pertaining to this specific topic, so there wasn't a lot. So expanding the knowledge on it is helpful. There are three main objectives of this study. The first is to determine if there is a correlation between social isolation and depression. The second is to determine any correlation between social isolation and motivation. And lastly, to gain information about quarantine activities. Those who are affected are individuals who are in affected areas, and that can be children, healthcare workers, parents of children who need childcare so that they can continue working if they are, and those who have to work from home. And it can also potentially have an effect on one's mental health, finances. It can cause fear from lack of information about the virus and lack of supplies, and it can also cause boredom. And the hypothesis for this study is that social isolation will increase depression and decrease motivation due to social isolation. Next, Gina will talk about the review of literature.
Two sources were used for the survey that was conducted: the Center of Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale and the MacArthur Network of SES and Health Questionnaire that was modified for the study survey. An article from the U.S. National Library of Medicine was used to define social isolation. Previous research looked at what influence social media had on depression and social isolation. 3 articles were used to examine this. Research on quarantine was also done. 3 articles looked at the laws associated with it. 1 looked at laws as far back as 2005, and the other 2 looked at more recent laws discussed before the quarantine. We also used 2 articles on Wuhan, China, One talked about the precautions in place there, and the other looked at mental health issues related to media exposure about the pandemic. Two other sources were used for this section. These articles talked about the effects of the pandemics the effects of the pandemic after after the pandemic, and looks at the psychological impact, and the other one looks at the growing boom in mental health apps and teletherapy. The last two sources were the ones that were most similar to the study, and the first one examines the association between loneliness and social isolation, and the other examines depression and social anxiety in relation to social isolation. But they also had participants download an app that incorporated the GPS data into their study. Next is Kayla with the research method.
So for our research method, we chose a quantitative online survey for the purpose of this study. We created a survey using FormStack, and it consisted of 41 questions aimed to target 3 elements impacting students while adhering to the state-mandated stay-at-home order. The first sequence of questions covered the epidemiological depression scale, and the remaining 22 questions pertained to participants' socioeconomic status, and it analyzed their daily behaviors and practices while under quarantine. In order for students to participate in this study, they were required to answer the very first question of the survey, which verified that they were above the age of 18 and that they were able to consent to participation, as we were only looking for survey results from participants 18 and older. So we distributed our survey through Youngstown State University professors. We asked a total of, of 8 professors to participate and to email this survey to their students. However, we only received 6 responses from professors who agreed to participate and send the survey out for us. So professors had their own choice of whether they offered an incentive for completing the survey for us. We, however, the researchers did not offer an incentive for completing the survey. And out of 73 responses received, we ended up receiving 70 that were used for analysis in our study. So next, Gina will cover the results that we found through the survey.
The survey used the Center of Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale, or the CSD scale, made up of 20 questions. Each participant could earn a possible score of 60, indicating a presence of depression. The results of this portion of the survey showed the participants displayed little symptomology of depression in correlation with social isolation due to the coronavirus quarantine. A modified version of the MacArthur Network on SES and health sociodemographic questionnaire was used to evaluate the participants. The results of the socioeconomic status showed a wide range of participants in different socioeconomic backgrounds. Also, the participants' socioeconomic status had little correlation with the symptoms of depression. Little to some correlation with the symptoms of depression. We asked participants about their daily activities and behavior during the quarantine, and the results show that participants who kept a more active routine during the quarantine had low correlation with symptoms of depression than those who were isolated communications from families and friends and indulged in social media. The next section is Brandon with discussion.
So after looking at the results, what was found was that quarantine was not affecting people as bad as people thought. For example, an example of this was the depression levels were not high at all for the people that were studied. Research showed that family had a huge impact on the depression level, because staying at home with your family, you're able to socialize and actually be with the people that you love, which ended up helping the people that we studied. The socioeconomic status, we had a wide range of participants with different backgrounds. Though some people couldn't pay bills, most of the people that were studied had savings to get by, which allowed them to be able to not be worried about money issues. For activities and behavior, um, social media was used to pass the time, which 65% of the people who were studied used. This allowed them to connect with the outside world and feel like they're socializing with people again. Um, a big thing was the idea of um, to adopt the idea to make a routine, to stay busy, to keep your mind off of what's happening outside, and to make sure that you're staying sane while this pandemic is occurring. Lastly, we're going to discuss the conclusion. So after discussing the discussion, we're going to conclude. Um, the study was conducted ethically and sufficiently. A good thing about the study was that the answers received were not what was hypothesized. For example, depression levels, not what we hypothesized, very low levels from the people that we studied. A bad thing about the study was that we needed more participants. We only had 70 that we were able to use. Um, this did not justify the magnitude of the problem, because there's millions of people that are being affected by it, not just 70. So the results would definitely be different if we had more people. And what should have been done different, or what we could do differently next time, is again get a broadened group to partake in a study. Overall, for the circumstances that we faced, we felt like the study went very well and gave an insight on what is happening to people who are being affected by this pandemic. Thank you.